TTB Music Podcast.
Happy summer.
Hello. Yeah.
It's cool for the summer.
Yeah.
Do-do-do-do-do-do. Pop tune, kids.
Ask you folks. Right.
Yeah, podcast 8.
Yeah.
I didn't write it down.
Let's
Yeah,
say
I think it's 8.
I think it's so. Isn't it July? It's July, but I know it's.
August,
not-
I'm not sure. I
Okay.
can't remember what.
Ah, well.
You know, if you've been paying attention at all, you probably know better than us. Anyway, 6 albums. Biffy, Clyro. God, can't even speak. Oh, it's a good
Clyro?
start. Yeah, Biffy, Clyro. Ellipsis. Michael Kiwanuka.
Well done.
Love and Hate. Yeah,
managed that one.
I remember last time when we reviewed his debut album, I
Yeah.
struggled to say it at all. Blood Orange, Freetown Sound. Mitski, Puberty 2. Back for Lashes, The Bride. And Steven Tyler were all somebody from somewhere. Just start off with a disclaimer in the fact that due to various reasons, Pete's only managed to get through, I think, all of them once with a bit of extras.
Yeah.
And I have struggled to do 3 listens of
Have
all
you?
of them this time.
All right.
Although I have got 3 of most of them now.
Is it because you've been staying out for the summer?
It is I've been
That's
staying
it,
out for the
tune
summer.
kids as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. I lost track of time, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, I got thinking, oh yeah, got plenty of time to do this stuff for the podcast.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, that's next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. It's life. That.
Yeah. Anywho, let's start with some Scottish rock and the 7th album from Biffy Clyro. Pete.
Yeah. Didn't like it. Okay. All right. Can I be more specific? Yes, I can. Look, this is it's okay. It's an okay album, but it really didn't set my world alight.
Yeah.
My issue, I guess, I can't remember if this is the first or the second of Biffy Clyro album we've.
It's the first.
Is
The
it
first.
the
It's the
blimey.
first one we've
Okay.
reviewed.
Wow. I guess I feel like I've reviewed one before, but hey, maybe I just listened to something. My issue here is it just sounds so well produced, and as a consequence, just doesn't feel like it has any edge. And my major issue is with the vocals. It's just polished.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's almost boy band.
Interesting you say that. So, but
yeah, go on.
no, I'll
I'd go as far as that. You know, it's almost like it feels like the next generation on from sort of lesser rock, you know, lad band, but heavier.
Yeah.
And I suppose the point I'm reaching for here, I suppose, is it feels like rock that with all the edges smoothed away equals commercial success.
I mean, there are a couple of tracks on the album that have co-writing credits from a couple of guys who co-wrote stuff on the 5 Seconds of Summer
There you go.
album, amongst other things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So, I mean, in conclusion, therefore, yeah, it was okay. It's an okay album. If you like their stuff, great. But I won't be rushing to listen to this again.
I have avoided Biffy Clyro for quite a while. Partly because I still haven't quite forgiven Spencer. Hello, Spence, for dragging me along to the iTunes Festival in 2012 to Roundhouse to see them live, and bar a couple of tracks, finding them incredibly tedious as a live act. And so I wasn't really looking forward to this album at all. But I have to confess, I actually quite like it.
Do you?
Yeah, okay. I mean, whilst not disagreeing particularly with anything you've said, because it is arguably over polished. But I don't know. It kind of won me over. I mean, I heard the single "Animal" on the radio, and found myself humming it for days afterwards. And I thought, I quite like that. It's quite.
Is it Radio 2, perchance?
It was Radio 2. I know, but there you go.
I think that's what I'm getting at.
Nighttime radio too, though, not daytime radio too, to be fair.
Right.
But yes, I thought this is I quite like this. At the same time, there are bits on it when you just think, okay, there are people that would have come to this band for the first time, perhaps through When We Collide, Matt Cardle's cover reworking of Many of Horror, their song in 2010's X Factor. And there are definitely songs on this album.
You just mentioned X Factor there as well.
I know,
yeah.
but there are songs on this album
Yeah.
that you could again see people doing.
Yeah. That's
as
it.
X Factor to win a single,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that necessarily in a bad way. 'Cause I think Simon Neil, who's the guitarist songwriter, does have a canny knack for writing that kind of song. And the thing that I kind of most interesting about this album, in a way, considering they are essentially a hard rock band, is I think they actually work better as a not rock band.
Yeah.
So the ballady songs, if you like, rearrange Small Wishes particularly. Show off his songwriting better, and are actually more interesting, and I think they're actually a more interesting band when they're not rocking as opposed to when they are rocking.
Great. Small Wishes. I thought, by at the point where I was kind of almost dragged into tedium, that actually was the track that pulled me back.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the album, and for exactly those reasons, I just felt that suddenly when everything went quieter, it just worked. It works.
Yeah. So basically, for me, it was actually, it's probably the first album of theirs that I would listen to again.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I've listened to it a couple of times. So, and Animal is one of my favourite songs of the year because it's daft.
I'll try again. Obviously, you offered the disclaimer at the start. I have really tried with these reviews to sort of project myself into the future and intensely overthink them.
More to come, I'm guessing.
Yeah!
Let's move on to the second album from Michael Kiwanuka, who won BBC's Sound of 2012.
Gosh.
Yes. And debut album Home Again came out 2 years later in 2014, which we reviewed and liked.
Was there that much of a gap between the two?
Yeah.
Wow.
And likely it had that kind of 70s folky soul thing going on. Bill Withers, Donny Hathaway.
Yeah.
Old school Soak and Foley, let's say. Folk and Soul.
Folk and Soul. Soak and Foley.
And so this album is interesting because you can think, okay, album number 2, only a couple of years gone. Is it going to be just, sides 3 and 4, as they say? And it's no. Definitely not.
No.
He's got together with Danger Mouse as a producer, and I think it's fair to say he's stretched his musical wings somewhat, and I think sets his stage right from the off with a 10-minute opening track. You're thinking, if you're gonna go for it, just self-indulgent, absolutely.
Yes.
But I think it's a damn fine start to this record. It could almost be Pink Floyd, in fact.
Yeah.
And again, I mean that definitely in a good way. It's in fact one of a couple of kind of Pink Floyd-esque moments on the record. And you start off that showing actually some good guitar chops, as well as keeping obviously the voice is still there. Goes from that into a kind of almost a kind of Laura Mvula kind of rhythm thing with the I think it's the single Black Man in the White World. Very catchy, cool song. And it kind of goes on from there, really. It's just immediately clear that his debut album wasn't a fluke, and that this is obviously a guy who's going to be around for a few years, and he's not afraid to kind of experiment within his musical tastes and interests. And you've still got the Marvin Gaye, Curtis Mayfield kind of vibe coming through on tracks like Place I Belong, which is one of my favourite cuts on the album. I'll Never Love towards the end as well. Beautiful song. Yeah. Love and Hate, I can imagine being a really, really good single. And it's an album that this is one I have listened to 3 times. And each listen, I've got more and more out of it. I think it's definitely one of his records that I'm going to continue listening to, and will be unsurprised if it fails to make we'll be surprised if it fails to make my top 10 at the moment.
I agree with all of that, and I can only imagine that repeated listenings do reward. It doesn't stray that far from, as you say, it doesn't stray that far from the template on the first album, vocally, or in terms of the songwriting. But there is there is progression enough in the musical stylings and the production, to same artist but down a different furrow. And I think anyone who appreciated the first album will love this album, and I think anyone coming new to it will think, wow, this is amazing. I'll check out the previous album, and it's well worth doing. Agree with Black Man in the White World. I one of my favourite tracks on the album, and you mentioned I'll Never Love, and I actually really enjoyed the final couple of tracks as well.
Yeah.
And yes, Pink Floyd. Who'd have thought?
I know.
Just there, the kind of old sort of Gilmore-esque instrumentals.
Absolutely. Because there is 5 minutes of basically some kind of pseudo background vocals and noodling.
No, it's just
before the first track actually starts.
Yeah, but it's I see from the track listing here, it's over 10 minutes. Doesn't feel like 10 minutes.
No.
Very enjoyable. So, would agree with your review of that album. In fact, I would go so far as to say, on repeated listenings, this is probably edging up into my top 10 somewhere.
Yeah. Praise indeed. Speaking of praise, now on to one of two albums in our list. In fact, the two next albums have both been getting quite a lot of critical praise. We shall see if that's if they're worthy of said praise or not very shortly. First of which is Blood Orange and Freetown Sound. This is the third album from it's Dev Hynes, who has had many different guises over the past 15 years, including Lightspeed Champion and various other things. This is the third album under this moniker of Blood Orange. Kind of soul-y again, really.
Yeah, we're back in soul territory. Or are we? Yes, we are. Or are we? No, really, we are. And that's how the album feels to me.
Yeah, I think that's quite an accurate description, really.
It's two albums spliced together with some other bits and pieces thrown in between to get the track listing up to 17 tracks. But don't let that put you off, because there's a lot of just quips and bits and skits in there. There was stuff to enjoy in here, to be honest with you. I found some of the tracks quite engaging, and then just as I was thinking I found where this is going, it would just flip and it would go somewhere else. Oh my goodness! Yeah, so are they having a full-on row out there?
There seems to be a fight going on in my house that just
like,
involved me.
Come taste the Vine Studio household.
Yes.
I mean, look at this. Yeah, let's turn the mic up, see if we can get in there.
There's parenting going on downstairs.
Going on now. Donald Trump wouldn't like it. Topical reference. Okay, I was joking when I said I like kids. Please get that kid out of here. It's a bit like that. It's an album with background noise.
It's an album with background noise. Yeah, and it's just.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. It felt like a demos album or an outtakes CD. There's lots of kind of like interesting ideas going on, most of which don't really seem to go anywhere or turn into anything. I mean, there's lots of really great brass and horns and stuff going on, and in some of the arrangements and things like that. When actually songs do actually eventually come along, there are a couple of decent songs. Like Hands Up, I really like. Hadron Collider, which features Nelly Furtado, because obviously there are lots of guest female vocals on the record. Similarly, which is the one there's one EVP, which is quite one of the more poppy things in the album. Has Debbie Harry doing some vocals, and Zuri Marley on Love You. I mean, these are all quite good tracks, but there's a lot of filler and a lot of just stuff going nowhere in between all this.
I think this could have been. You could have kept a couple of the skits, but actually, at the same time, if you cut most of it out, you could have had a really solid album in there. It's really good. But I mean, really good in terms of how it's pulled together, but it's not so great in terms of how it actually sounds. And it's kind of an album that feels like, I feel like I'm completely unsure where it's going. I'm not entirely sure they're sure where it's going either.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair summation. I think it is just. I think a lot of the stronger reviews for it are either seeing something that clearly we're both not getting, or it's just kind of people who are big fans of devs who just think he can do no wrong. Kind of thing.
I have a feeling it might be the latter.
I have a feeling it might be the latter too, but far be it from me to prejudge other people.
No. So repeated listening, I think I certainly need to find out what's going on there.
And so we now move on to, like I said, another album that's actually been getting quite good, very good critical praise recently, which is this. I've written down 6, though I'm not sure that's right. I think it might be the 4th album from a lady called Mitski. The album's called Puberty 2, by far the shortest album on our list, which I think comes in under half an hour. And the first of 2 back-to-back happy albums, I think we can definitely say, certainly lyrically. It's kind of, and this is made quite funny by the fact the opening track on this album is called Happy, which starts off with a kind of a relentless electro drum noise, essentially, that lasts for about the first minute and then slowly starts fading away as the rest of the track kind of builds. So it's kind of anything but happy. Bizarrely, it turns into actually a very good track. Although it doesn't immediately think you don't immediately think that's what's going to happen. Very visceral and self-reflecting record lyrically about love and life. I liked one of the lyrics. I think it's in the song "Firework," which is "One morning this sadness will fossilise and I will forget how to cry," which I thought was a kind of nice kind of visual. Reminded me a lot musically and vocally, particularly of Sharon Van Etten and Lana Del Rey at times. Yes. The added kind of anger and lo-fi charm of Liz Phair. My problems with it was what I kind of ended up finding it more interesting than compelling, and it seemed to lack enough musical depth to actually really hook me in and make it essential listening. Saying that, there was some obvious kind of fun stuff on it, so like Best American Girl, which is kind of Weezer-like. Loving Feeling similarly, and a kind of Kate Bush tinged Thursday Girl towards the end of the album, which I kind of thought was a highlight too. So interesting without being totally compelling.
I think it hits a kind of indie driven peak in the album with Your Best American Girl, followed by I Bet on Losing Dogs.
Yeah, which is a great title. My
Body's Made of Crushed Little Stars. I quite enjoyed the middle of the album. Hey, I enjoyed the middle. No, I was actually a fan of Puberty too. Never a fan of Puberty, but I was a fan of Puberty too.
For the sequel,
thank you very much. So, for me, this was one of the more interesting. I found this a more interesting record than the one we just previously reviewed.
Yeah,
in that, whilst again it's that mixture of songwriting style or emphasis of different songwriting styles or song styles, the mix was better presented, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
And to be
fair, it's quite short, so didn't have any time to go rambling into other kind of areas.
No. And I found it, and in comparison to the album we're about to review, there was certainly a lot more light, shall we say, in terms of I listened to the 2 back to back, you see. And in terms of the vocal style, and whilst Happy's does start with the contradiction,
yes,
it does actually build into I'm kind of roundabout knock along records. You know what I mean? Yeah. So no, this one I did enjoy.
So moving on, keeping the happiness going, we move on to the 4th album from Natasha Khan, otherwise known as Bat for Lashes. Called The Bride. It's a concept album following the story of a woman whose fiance dies in a car crash on the way to the wedding. And she then decides to go on the honeymoon anyway to kind of exercise her demons, as it were. So interesting kind of idea for a cycle of songs. Does it work lyrically? Does it work musically?
I enjoyed this album more than I'm going to let on. This is the one where I did actually get more than a first shot at listening, and I think had I listened to this a couple more times, I'd have probably really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's just been Mercury nominated.
It has just been Mercury nominated.
We've reviewed other albums this year, one or two of which have also been Mercury nominated, and I was thinking of Savage's Adore Life as well when I was listening to this, but this is a far slower, sadder,
it's
more melancholic.
It's certainly both of those things.
Version of that. I mean, lyrically, a bit silly in places. Obviously, if you're going to present that concept and do it well, there are times where it's going to feel a bit forced.
Yeah.
But actually, I thought musically, perfectly fine record. Had that, as all concept albums do, had that sort of soundtrack feel to it. And you could follow the story and follow the progression of the story. My favourite tracks, I did like I Do, the opening track.
Yeah.
And Widow's Peak. And I Will Love Again.
I Will Love Again is a great song.
A very great track. So overall, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this record, and I probably have indicated more than I was intending to how much I did.
Yeah, I think it is. It's as you say, it's interesting. So it has been nominated for Mercury, which I was thinking about it when I was looking where I read that story just the other day. I thought it was interesting that it came on this particular podcast, given that obviously it's been nominated for the Mercury twice previous, failing to win. Biffy Clyro have been nominated for a Mercury before, failing to win. Michael Kiwanuka Naka has also been nominated for a Mercury Prize before, failed to win. But so I thought it was interesting that basically with reviewing albums, and in this group of albums we're reviewing that are by British artists, 3 of the 4 that are by British artists are people that have had Mercury nominations at some point. But yeah, it's this album. This album is definitely a grower. I think the more I've thought about this album, I've listened to that. I've listened to similar to you. I've listened to the album. This is the one I've listened to 4 times actually. Yeah. I think it's 2/3 of a very, very good album.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
And for me, whilst I Will Live Again is second last track, I do think the final third of the album is both lyrically weakest and musically the weakest. And because the album is kind of one paced, pretty much. It is all of a kind of much, and I think that the first half of the album manages to overcome that by the strength of the arrangements and the storytelling. Yeah. I think the final third of the album, those bits are not as good, with the exception of I Will Love Again. And as a result, it's in those tracks that you actually start to think, actually, this is a bit samey. This is dragging a bit.
Do you think the concept has gone too far by that point? Do you think the listener is perhaps?
Perhaps, yeah. I definitely think that towards the end, it seems to be struggling to keep the momentum of the story going, which is going on quite nicely up until that point. Yeah. So perhaps that's what it is. I mean, I still think, it's still 2/3 of a very good album and those 2/3 are better than a lot of the stuff we've listened to this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's an album that I would recommend just based on those 2/3, despite my reservations about the final third. But overall, I think it's good, and I do like her personally immensely. I think she's someone who definitely seems to be the kind of person who is more interested in staying true to herself rather than chasing hit singles.
Yeah. Oh, that's clear.
Yeah. It's not exactly packed full of obvious hit singles, this album.
Interesting final thought on this. You mentioned the Mercury, and this is you could argue the second album this year's nominations that uses death as a theme.
Apparently, she was listening to Mr. Bowie's album
Was she?
whilst recording the tail end of this record.
Wow. Well, there you go.
So, speaking of somebody that's not chasing commercial gain,
Doesn't need to.
let's move on to the final album. And do you remember when we were all sat down thinking, what we really need is for Steven Tyler to do a kind of country album?
I remember that very conversation.
Yeah.
No
one remembers that conversation. Nobody has ever had that conversation. That, you know, that in itself highlights one of the many problems with this record. Clearly, Stephen spent a lot of time doing American Idol, where he would have been subjected to quite a lot of people doing country pop.
Yeah.
And for some unknown reason, he clearly decided that for his first solo album, he was going to make an album of that ilk, which is, you know, fine. You could cynically say it's kind of a play for hits, if you're being such a person. However, got T-Bone Burnett and Dan Huff, two very respected producers, and particularly of country music, but also of stuff just generally, in to help him produce the album. He's worked with some songwriters, the Warren Brothers, and in particular, what's her name, Hilary Lindsay, who has written for people like Faith Hill, Carrie Underwood, Taylor Swift, Tim McGraw, Luke Bryan. So, and won a Grammy, in fact. So, you know, someone that is in the biz, kind of knows what they're doing. In fact, I think she wrote the song that Gwyneth Paltrow sung in that country film, Country Strong, was it? I think it was nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so you've got that, so, and then you kind of think, okay, and the album starts, and you kind of think, okay, My Own Worst Enemy, I quite like this. It's quite good. You're thinking, it's hardly country. And again, that's one of the interesting things about this record. Allegedly, it's a country album. It's gone straight into #1 in the American country album charts. It's a country album that isn't very country, even by the standards of today's country pop. Don't get me wrong, there are a couple of bits that are pure flag-waving country pop. So Red, White and You, I think Somebody New, and I'm not sure what the other track is. There's another one that's really out there. I think it's Love Is Your Name. Very kind of country pop. But by the same token, a lot of this stuff you're just thinking, this is just kind of an Aerosmith album, but with mandolins.
Yes.
For good or ill. It's not the best, and that's the thing. Despite the fact of all I've just said, it's not actually a bad record.
No.
It's perfectly fine. Some of it, like I said, it starts off actually quite strong. My Own Worst Enemy, pretty good. We're All Somebody From Somewhere, Hold On, are all fine. If you ignore things like Gypsy Girl, which is quite dreadful, the slightly pointless redo of Janie's Got a Gun, which is one of my favourite Aerosmith songs actually, but not sure why I decided to redo it. I haven't really added anything to it, and I haven't really countryed it up particularly either. So it's so it kind of, at least if they'd kind of like really gone to town with it in a country way, it might have been interesting, but haven't really. And so it is one of those things you're thinking, yeah, it's fine, it's enjoyable, and even provides a real bit of genuine funniness when it's a song by a woman called Alicia Bonagura. I had to write this down because I wouldn't remember it otherwise. Who is an American singer-songwriter who was apparently temporarily a member of the Mighty Wah.
Oh, right. Wow.
And I'm presuming that time in the UK was where she came across Catatonia.
Wow. Yeah.
because the chorus of her song that he covers on this album called I Make My Own Sunshine is pretty much Road Rage by Catatonia. Almost note for note. Yeah. So yeah, it's one of those records I kind of don't understand the point of it in a way and what he was trying to do, but it's fine. It's enjoyable. I mean, I listened to it. I thought, yeah, that's right. It was foot tapping when it was meant to be tapping, but still nothing out of the ordinary.
No, agree. Could have been shorter. Could have lost those.
It definitely could have been shorter. Yes.
Shorter. I actually, it was only when you said this is supposed to be a country album, I was like, what?
Well, yeah, that's the point. Exactly. It's very light on the.
Very light.
Even by country pop standards.
Even by the country pop standards of today, this is not a country album. This is at best an acoustic Americana-esque album. You know, with a bit of folk thrown in. Where I found actually, it was kind of reassuringly familiar.
Yeah.
Were on those tracks that did sound more like Aerosmith.
Yeah.
When he goes the full Steven Tyler, you know, Aerosmith. I think we're all somebody from somewhere.
Yeah.
And that even the cover at the end of Piece of My Heart.
Piece of My Heart, yeah, which is actually quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a good cover, and I could, like you say, as you look into the pop hits, I could immediately see that soundtracking a whiskey advert or a perfume advert or something, you know.
And also, it's the typical thing, like all Aerosmith albums. You've got the kind of Stones influence thing of what I'm doing right. You've got Beatles element in the middle of I Ain't Easy, and you know that's kind of standard things
for that. But it's a shame really he's kind of struck out far enough, but not too far away from bass, which sounds like I've just contradicted what I said. But it didn't. It felt it could have gone more country if he'd been more daring.
Yeah, I think it does lack
any country,
any kind of bravery. Really,
Yeah.
It's just not gonna. I mean, I'll have to kind of end this with a quote from his erstwhile bandmate Joe Perry, who was quoted in the American press by saying, "Stephen's in Nashville doing whatever he's doing. He's got a fucking rhinestone cowboy on, going yippee-ki-yay." I don't know what else to say. Much to say about it, really.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of sums it up, except there's not enough yippee-ki-yay.
No,
Not a melon farmer in sight.
no. That's perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah.
I hope he does another one.
Well, I'm sure he will.
Yeah. No, sincerely, I do.
If just to annoy his bandmates.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if he actually, just went for it.
Yeah. Just go for it. Because actually, final thought from me, my own worst enemy, which you also like. For me, that was one of the most different tracks on the album, the opening track.
Yeah.
He actually vocally sounded gruffer and different on that track as well.
But again, it sounded very much like an Aerosmith song.
It did, but didn't. You're never going to escape that, I suppose, because of he is who he is. But I just found that was different enough, that track. Whereas what followed was perhaps more formulaic.
Yeah. So, album of the podcast, for me, it'll be a tie.
Ooh,
between
tie.
Bats for Lashes and Michael Kiwanuka. I'm just going to say it wrong again now. Kiwanuka.
I'm going to come down on the side of Bats for Lashes. I'd agree with those two choices. I'm going to come down on the side of Bats for Lashes. Bat for Lasses.
Bat for Lasses.
That's the one. Bat for the Lasses.
Yeah, so it's win for Biffy Clyro then.
Yeah. No.
Sorry, Spence.
Sorry, Spence.
Till next time.